Good afternoon and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. We run weekly webinars aimed to provide advice and share knowledge on key business topics and specialist areas. And joining me today is BizSmart Select member Mike Gardner, the Time Doctor. And in today's webinar, Mike will help us find the time to run a successful business but still find time to spend it with our family and friends. Before we start our webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have, and Mike will do his best to answer them all at the end of the session. Okay, Mike, thank you, and over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Caroline, and welcome everybody. So today's title has already been mentioned: how do we run a successful business, spend time with your partner and still hang out with your friends? It's one of the questions I get asked such a lot. What tends to happen is people decide that they want to leave the corporate world, they set up on their own, and then they realise they're working for the biggest renegade of a boss, themselves, and they take all their time up. And very quickly what tends to happen is they discover that they don't have the time to spend with their families, or they're getting nagged by the partners at home because they're never there. So the idea of today's program is really just to discuss some things around that and give you some hints and tips that you can take away and hopefully make life a little bit more balanced for you. You will find I don't use the term work-life balance that much, purely because work-life balance means so much it means different things really to different people. So how have I got into it? In terms of who I am, just a little bit really. So this year I celebrate 25 years in the personal development industry, in the training development industry, and over that time in various guises, I think at a rough estimate we've trained over 100,000 delegates on my courses. Like many of yourselves, I've been a business owner for over 16 years now, coming up to nearly 17 years. I write about time management, I speak about time management, and I'm a trainer, and obviously I mentor people on time management as well. And it's a subject that I'm really passionate about. And I know that might sound a little bit sad, but it comes from my background in the forces really. In the forces, you're very much, when you're going through your basic training, it's very much if you arrive somewhere and you're 5 minutes early, you're actually 10 minutes late. So that's what tends to sort of starts to get time management sort of instilled into the system. But it wasn't really until many years later.
Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen only.
It wasn't until many years later when I started doing operations with the RAF Regiment in my role with the RAF Reserves that all those years of training and what time management actually means started coming to the forefront. And really in my role as a reserve officer, if I don't get my lads to certain places on time when we're out on operations, then the bottom line is people's lives could depend on it. And whilst that's probably not the case in terms of your business and your small business, what I have seen time and time again is where individuals spend so much time working both in and on their business and not taking care of relationships, that what they end up doing is they end up with a successful business, but they look back and there's a lot of collateral damage, and that collateral damage tends to be in terms of relationships, both with partners and with children, with friends, and they don't find the time to actually look after themselves and do some of the hobbies that they really enjoy doing. So one of the big questions I get asked all the time is, what is time management? Key question, lots of different answers, but there's a lot of people out there that try to make time management into this really sort of difficult subject, and they put loads of words around it. And for me, I try and keep the whole thing very, very simple really. So in terms of answering that question, what is time management? For me, it's made up of three key components. And I say time management is best described as taking action. It's about taking action for the right reason. And that right reason should be because it's linked to our goals and objectives. And we'll talk about goals and objectives in a little while. So it's taking action for the right reasons. it's taking action at the right time. So by making sure we're prioritising and we're prioritising correctly. And then last but not least, it's about taking action in the right way. So it's about being organised. It's about being able to schedule things. And for me, that's what time management is all about. And cutting right to the chase, really, it's about doing the right things. So setting goals and then finding the time to do them, and then do them in the right way. And those are some of the things that we will talk about as we go through the remainder of this webinar. It can be a lot of work, and a lot of people will say, yeah, well, I do this, I've got a business to run, I've got a life to lead, and you're asking me to do all these things. So what are the actual sort of benefits of time management? And for me, a lot of the benefits come in a number of areas, but some of the key ones are, it is about, quite rightly really, it's about getting things done on time. If you can manage your time better, then you will be less stressed, you'll be healthy, you'll be easier to live with. And the thing about that is as well, is that then starts leading to better relationships, both with friends, with family, and also a better relationship with yourself. Because when it comes down to it, if we look at the definition we've just talked about, time management itself is all about self-management. It's about self-awareness. So once we've got that clarity of thought and a clarity of thought process, then we'll be able to anticipate problems better. And the key thing for a small business owner is we'll be open to new opportunities all the time, because our mind's less clouded, less clogged up with the stuff that we've got to do. And then some of the things as well is, in terms of small business owner, being a small business owner, if you have people working for you, then you can act as a role model for other people. And acting as a role model in the way that you manage time is showing other people how to do it, and then that leads to us being able to develop other people as well. And it's about the impression that you give as well. We all know that about first impressions and how people perceive us. So by being able to manage our time better, managing ourselves better, one of the things we will do to other people and to clients is we'll always appear organised, we'll always appear to be competent. How many times as a business owner have you maybe gone to talk with a client or maybe a supplier, and they don't come across as being as organised as you would want them to be? And straight away, if they can't be organised for the meeting with you, then are they going to be organised? How are they going to go about the work that they're agreeing to do with you? And that links into the next one really, because first and foremost, and a real bottom line one for me, is this whole thing about being aware of others' time wasting and being motivated to help them. So you'll be able to spot when they're wasting both their own time, but also stealing your time as well. And one of the big things about time is a lot of people are always prepared to sort of steal our time. How many times have you been subject to that person who wanders up to you and says, you know, have you got a minute? And that minute invariably ends up turning into 15, which is 15 minutes of our own valuable time. So one of the things that I always say around time management is we need to be aware of our thought process. And because the way that we think and the way that we approach work in general also has an impact on the way we manage our time. So we start talking about left and right brain thinkers, or as I call them, our reactors and planners. So let me ask you a quick question. If you were to look at your desk now, or if you're not in your office, if you would go into your desk, Caroline's just looking around hers now, which one of these does it look like? Is it nice and smart? Is it nice and tidy, a place for everything in its place? Or do you tend to have an in-desk as opposed to an in-tray? Now, there's nothing wrong with it, because what tends to happen, Caroline's just rapidly tidying her desk now. What tends to happen, left brain thinkers are invariably very logical people. So left brain, very logical, and they're very structured. So they like They'll like to-do lists, they like plans, they like to have a real overall view of where they're going. And left brain thinkers also like to concentrate on one task at a time. So taking it from the start right the way through to the finish. Right brain thinkers, you may not believe it looking at that picture, but a lot of the right brain thinkers will know exactly where everything is on that desk. And a left brain thinker will come up to them and they'll say something along the lines of, that report I gave you last week, any chance I can have it back? And a right brain thinker will rummage through all those papers on their desk there and they'll find it right at the bottom and hand it to them. And the left brain thinker will walk away scratching their head thinking, how the hell did they know where that was? So right brain thinkers, they like to have lots of balls up in the air, so they like juggling lots of things. They're very much lastminute.com people, and in fact a lot of them, it's a bit of a stroke the ego really when they deliver something right at the last minute. And it's that case of, there you go, you didn't think I was going to achieve that, did you? But they never miss a deadline, but they always cut it to the very last minute. And the other thing with right brain thinkers as well is they don't like structure, and to-do lists tend to become a burden around their necks, whereas with left brain thinkers they like to-do lists and they like the structure that goes along with those to-do lists as well. And it's quite interesting that a lot of people that I get onto my workshops are invariably right brain thinkers that are sent on them by their left brain managers, because the left brain managers, they want to know how a project or a plan is progressing, and the right brain thinkers there, well, it'd be progressing a lot faster if you didn't keep asking me where I was with it. So there seems to be there's a bit of a conflict between the two sides of thinking really. So once we know sort of where we are, then we can start thinking about how we can manage our time and how we can move things forward. But having said that, again, then it's all about, one of the things that we have to do, whether a left brain thinker or whether we're a right brain thinker, is very much about what's our starting point. And for me, our starting point is very much around goals and goal setting. So my view is that when we start looking at things, it's very much a case of what do we really want to achieve? And I have a firm belief that a lot of people, when it comes to setting goals, and particularly within small businesses, they set goals wrong. A lot of small business owners tend to set goals wrongly. So what they do is they set what I call achievement goals. So they set the goals for the business in terms of maybe turnover, the amount of sales they want to bring in, the amount of employees. They start doing that and they might be driving towards this really successful business, but at what cost? Because they haven't thought about the other aspects of their life and what they've actually got, what they want to preserve. So you end up, and I'm sure you could sort of you could reel off the names of a few people that are really successful business owners, but they've had that collateral damage in terms of they haven't got their relationships, they haven't got their access to the kids and things like that. So I think in terms of goals, just a bit of one of my favourite quotes there from James Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. I know what I'm going to do this year and next year and the year after that, and I'm going to shake the dust off this crummy little town off my feet and build skyscrapers and airfields. A bit straight there and to the point. But for me, as we said, achievement goals is only 25% of the job. So in terms of setting goals, I pare it back to, it's about two questions, and there's two answers to each of those questions. And the first question is very much about, do I have it? And the next question is, do I want it? And for each of those questions, there's a yes or a no answer. And if we start thinking about those questions and those answers, then what we end up doing is we end up talking about holistic goals and setting goals that can help us keep a balance between our business and our family life. So the first question is the one that everybody does. So do I have it? So what do I do? What do I want that I don't have? So it's a case of, do I have it? No. Do I want it? Yes. So that's what we're striving towards. That's what we want to achieve. So it might be that you want to achieve a certain size of business. You want to achieve a certain turnover. You want to recruit employees. So a lot of those business related goals. Maybe you've got some personal ones in there as well, that you want to lose weight, you want to get fit, but they're all achievement goals. So the next one that comes along then is to start thinking about, actually, what do we already have in our life that we want to keep? So what do I have, and do I want it? And if the answer is yes to both of those, then, you know, what do I want that I already have in my life? So for me, that's about the things that we want to preserve, and it's what I call preservation goals, because it's all right achieving, striving to achieve things. So if you want that successful business, but if you've already got a loving relationship with your partner and a great relationship with your kids, you know, do you want to keep that? I'm going to make and I know it's a big assumption, but I'm going to assume yes. And if you want to keep that, then at what cost? You know, how does that align with your achievement? So if we're striving to push the business forward, really we want to do it in a way that makes sure that we preserve those relationships that we want to keep. So then the next one we've got is basically we're talking about, what do I have in my life already that I don't want? So what do I have that I don't want? So have I got it? Yes. Do I want it? No. And for me, those are the elimination goals. So it might be that you are striving for that big successful business. Maybe as a result of that, you've built up some debt. Maybe there's a lot of stress. You've got a lot of stress going around the place. If that's what you want, in most instances, people say no. So, you know, if I've got it, yes. Do I really want it? No. So for me, we've got to put goals in place that help us to eliminate those things that we don't want anymore. So how can we cut that stress down? How can we make sure that, you know, we maybe not got as much debt? How do we cut those down? What do we do? It might even be a case that, in terms of elimination, from a business owner perspective, we've all got those clients that take up a massive amount of our time, but we get very little reward from them. And sometimes it's a case of, actually, do you know what, do I want to work with that type of client anymore? Or is it actually time to eliminate them? I'm not saying go out and shoot them, but it is okay to sack your clients now and again. And then the last one is, you know, do I have it? No. Do I want it? No. So as I said there, you know, what don't I have that I don't want? And that is that avoidance. So for me, it's these avoidance goals. So maybe, you know, it's not the case that maybe you can go through a process that you get rid of that stress, but what can we do then to make sure that it doesn't come back again in the future? So you might be lucky enough, and maybe you're quite sort of chilled and relaxed and haven't got any stress in your life at all, in which case let's set some goals and make sure that we take a holistic approach to make sure that doesn't happen at all. It might be, we've already talked about the build-up of loans and debts perhaps. It might be that you know, you're lucky enough and you've got that business and it's a complete self-funding business. Now, it is very, very tempting in driving to achieve and grow that business to maybe take on loans to improve the cash flow and things, maybe take on extra employees and push ourselves to the limit, things like that. But if that's going to lead to the stress side of things, then we've got to make sure that we do things that keep that avoidance, set an avoidance goal so as it doesn't lead to it. So for me, goal setting, and that's why I say 25% of goal setting is about achievement, but everybody else forgets the other 75%. And that's what we've got to do to keep everything in balance and to keep everything moving forward. So we said right at the beginning that the first part of time management is taking action for a reason, because it's linked to priorities and goals, which is what we've just talked about there. So the next thing that we need to do then is to complete the second part of it, which is very much about prioritization. So prioritizing, or what gets results and what's a waste of time. And it's all about making sure that we're doing things at the right time. And a lot of people straight away think about prioritization and they use to-do lists. And And whilst they work for a lot of people, as I said earlier, what tends to happen with to-do lists is that for left-brain people, they really like them, and they'll have a whole list of things, and they'll steadily work through them, and they'll be able to prioritize them. For some of you that are listening, you will be right-brain thinkers. And what tends to happen with right-brain thinkers is they will make a list of all the things that they've got to do, and they'll come in ready and raring to go, and then they'll go off, they'll be busy all day. They won't be not skiving, being lazy or anything like that, but then they'll come back to their desks at the end of the day, they'll look at the to-do list, and there'll be that dawn of realization that they've not actually completed anything that was on the list, even though they've been really busy all day. So what they tend to do then is they'll reschedule it again for the next day, and they'll add a few more things to the list, and then they maybe throw that list in the bin and write another one, and then another one. They'll have lists of lists, and in the end they'll just give up completely because lists don't work for them. And there has to be this understanding that to-do lists, whilst they can work, they don't necessarily work for right-brained people. So when it comes to prioritizing things, one of the things that I say, instead of looking at to-do lists as a whole, start thinking about what I term are action lists. And I think there's a big sort of difference between the two sides. So you can have a master list, which is just a list of everything. And what I tend to do is, if I say I'm going to do something for anybody, it goes on my master list. And it's a little A5, it's an A5 folder, and it gets added in there, and that is my ongoing thing. But then every day you have an action today list. And all an action today list is, it's an identification of the 3 things that, come what may, you have to either complete or make a start on during the day. And when I say make a start on, it's all about making progress. So you identify your 3 things, and then what you do is you start on that first one, and you get it to a point where you can't do anything else with it. For ourselves as business owners, it's invariably because we're waiting for information from somebody else. So we get it to that point, a point where it's easy to pick up, and then we'll start on the second one and do the same one. So with the second one, we'll work through it until such a time as we get the information that we require to finish the first one off, in which case we stop the second one at a point where it's easy to pick up again and then go back and finish the first one, or we go right the way through until the second one is finished and then we hit the third one. The main reason for only doing 3 is because as business owners, every single day we get curveballs thrown at us. So we get customers phoning up, things have gone wrong, they need our questions, they need our support, and there's times when we just have to drop everything. So 3 is a manageable chunk, and when we link it into a framework in a minute, you'll see why. It just leaves you that room as well, that, if you like, for want of a better term, wriggle room, can't even say it now, right, to actually sort of help clients out without you getting knocked off stream too much. So talking about action lists, action to-do lists. So if you look at a master action list, invariably it's an A5 notebook. One of the things I'll always say, only have one list, particularly if anybody's sort of out there and working mums and things like that. I see mums having they'll have one list for home life, they have one list for work life, they have one list for social activities. Only have your action list, your master action list is just one list of everything. Write everything down. So if you've said you're going to do something for a client, if you said you're going to do something for someone, just write that list down. If it's a big project, then break it down into small pieces, because it's those small pieces, those small tasks that get put across onto your daily action list. One of the things about your action lists is review it at the same time every day. Some people like doing it at the end of every day. Other people like doing it first thing in the morning. A lot of it depends on what's best for you, really, in terms of your sort of energy cycles, which we'll talk about later. For me, reviewing my action list is the last thing I do every day. Like a lot of people, I do work from home. I've got a nice office at home, and it's very easy to get dragged in there 24 hours a day when you're running the business. So for me, it's the last thing I do, and once I've done that, the office door gets closed, and that's it. That's office time and business time finished for the day. And then the last one is, and if you take nothing else away from today, please take this away. Never accept anything from anybody unless there's a deadline to it. A lot of people say, oh yeah, I need this as soon as possible. Well, when you look at your watch, I'm sure you'll find that as soon as possible isn't a time on there. Get a deadline for when people need it to be done by, because only then can you genuinely answer whether you can prioritize that task or not. Where does it fit into your list of priorities? If people don't give you a list, if they don't give you a deadline, then suggest one yourself that fits in with your list of priorities, and give them the option to come back and say if they need it doing sooner or whatever. What you'll tend to find is most people will say that that's okay. So if somebody says to me, even at a client meeting, if I agree to do something for a client, I will ask the client, when do they need it doing by? And 9 times out of 10, they'll come back and they'll say, well, when can you do it? And then it's up to me then to fit it in around my schedules. So that's our master action list. That's our list of everything. And then we have our daily action list. Same thing again, write it out at the same time every day. Only include 3 things. And as I say there, that come hell or high water, you have to complete. Starting your first task until it's finished, as we've already said, or you can't take it any further, and then start on the next task. And one of the things about this is you will find that at the end of the day, you have made at least a start or completed 2 or 3 of those actions. And it might sound a little bit sort of, well, 3 is not very many, but how many actions do you actually complete at this moment in time? And the average business owner, if we take into account holidays and bank holidays and time off, works about 220 days a year. So let's just say you only completed 2 actions every day. Over the course of a year, that's 440 actions that you could take towards growing your business or keeping your business running. For most people, that's something that makes a lot of difference. So in terms of bringing all that together, a lot of people often ask, well, okay, we've got all these lists, but how do we actually prioritize them? And this is where this next model comes in. I'm sure a number of you would have seen it before. A lot of you would know that it's attributed to, it's called the urgency and importance matrix, and it's attributed to Stephen Covey. What many people don't realize is Stephen Covey did what most good people do. They took somebody else's model and then made it famous. So it was actually originally made famous by General Eisenhower. And General Eisenhower used to say, or he's reported to have said, that the things that people think are important are very rarely urgent, and the things that people think are urgent are very rarely important. And it was taking that terminology that Stephen Covey in his book of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People started bringing this grid forward and making it work. So your A window there, those are the tasks that are both important and urgent, and those are the things that you have to do now. So we've run out of time to do them. If you have people working for you, or if you maybe work with a virtual assistant, or you outsource some of the work, if things go into this box, you can't delegate it any further. If you try to do that, it's not delegation, it's abdication. So the next box, the B box, is these are the things that are important, but they're not urgent. And in terms of a definition, our important tasks are the things that, if we don't do them, they're going to have an impact on the reputation of maybe you as an individual, your business as a whole, and it'll have possibly an impact on the client relationships. And a task is either important or it's not. In terms of urgency, the urgency of a task can change the nearer it gets to the deadline for which it's going to be completed. So the nearer it gets to that deadline, the more urgent a task becomes. So with these tasks in box B, excuse me, in box B, what tends to happen is we do get time to plan and schedule these because they might be important. However, They're not urgent at the moment, so we do have time to plan and schedule them. And a lot of things that fall into this box, we'll look in greater detail, but a lot of things that fall into this box are the stuff that we have to do on a regular basis. If we have staff working for us, as an example, maybe we have to do yearly appraisals or 6 monthly appraisals for them. We know that every year we've got to do our tax returns by a certain point, so we can plan and schedule things well in advance. If we're running long-term projects, we know that there's things that we have to do on a regular basis. Maybe we've got to give people updates. Maybe we've got to give financial information, financial updates. So all these things are things that can be put into that box there. And I would go as far as to say that, in terms of getting that balance right between the business and the family, for me, one of the things that goes in there is Friday afternoons I don't work, and it's planned in advance because that's time that I get to spend with my better half. Also, and it's a big standing joke for a lot of clients with me, one of the things that goes in there is I don't work August. So it's become a standing joke with my clients that they'll ask for work to be done in August, and it's very quickly followed up, but you don't do August here. And no, I don't. So thinking about what you can plan instead of doing things last minute. And then what you get is you get box C, and these are the tasks that they're not important, but they are urgent. And these tend to be the tasks that, what happens with these tasks is that they're usually quite quick and simple tasks. So they will come in and they'll tasks that are not going to take you very long to do. So what happens is, if you're right-handed, you tend to push them towards the right-hand side of the desk, and people end up with this great big pile of stuff that they know is not going to take them very long to do. The other thing that falls into this box as well is sometimes tasks that we actually really enjoy doing, and because we really enjoy doing them, we can spend a great amount of time on them, sometimes a lot longer than is actually required to do the job. And then the biggest thing that falls into this box here as well is time stealers that are imposed by other people. Those meetings where there's no agendas. As I said earlier, those things where somebody comes up to you and have you got a few minutes, and it turns into 15. Although those unexpected email is a big time stealer. Those unexpected telephone calls. And then last but not least, you've got these D tasks. And these are the tasks. They're not important, but they're not urgent either. I have a big question around these all the time, and that's why bother? Because what tends to happen, these are usually self-inflicted time stealers. These are when you, and I'm sure it doesn't align to anybody that's listening to this, but I have come across people that they start doing a bit of work-related research on the internet, and then miraculously discover that they've been drawn to this site looking at next year's holiday and things like that. So, what's your self-imposed time stealers? So all those things have to come into play. Now, it's one thing knowing about this, but a lot of things, how does this actually work and how does it affect us in terms of our time management? What tends to happen is, because people don't plan and schedule effectively enough, they end up with lots of things moving. They started off in the B box, but now they have ended up in the being important and urgent, and they're now in the A box. Also, what happens is people, because they push the C tasks to one side, then they also end up creeping up into the A box. And then you have an A box that is full of do it now stuff, and we tend to run around firefighting all the time. Now, for left brain thinkers, this is their worst nightmare because they've got loads of things now that they've got to do. Right brain thinkers, to a certain extent, quite like it because they can juggle all the balls and they can keep, they feel as though they can keep things in check. And it is all right until emergencies come into play. When we get that client phone call that says they need our help now, because all those emergencies fall into the A box all the time. And in order to deal with those, what we then have to do is we end up dropping one of the balls. So because we end up dropping one of the balls, then we end up, and we have to, because otherwise we can't deal with the emergencies. So what should be happening really, I'm not going to say that you need to stop everything going from the B box into the A box, because at the end of the day life gets in the way, and it's a case of we have to deal with those wonderful people called clients, and clients are always coming back to us. So I'm not saying that you should stop everything coming from the B box into the A box. However, it should be the exception rather than the norm. But what I will say is those C tasks should never get into your A box, because what should happen is as soon as they come in, they're either dealt with or they're planned and scheduled, so they go into the B box, which in turn then, when we do get an emergency come in, it doesn't have such an impact. We can deal with the emergencies and it doesn't have such a knock-on effect, and we don't end up working till 10, 11, midnight, burning the midnight oil to get the rest of the stuff done, because we've not had a chance to do it, because we're having to concentrate on the emergencies. And then another way to sort of think about all this is very much around, where do we spend our time? Where do we concentrate on our time? So what we need to do is start identifying those tasks that give us our biggest results. And there's a thing called some of you would have heard of it, I'm sure, the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. And basically, if you look at your business and you look at it, you will find that 80% of your clients, 20% of your clients are responsible for approximately 80% of your turnover. You will find that 20% of your clients cause you 80% of your problems. If you've got staff working for you, you will find that 20% of your staff give you 80% of your problems. What does that mean to us, and how does it work in terms of time management? This is my take on it. It's about effort and results. So what you tend to find is 80% of our effort gives us 20% of our results. And that's those people who are busy fools. They're running around all over the place. They're running backwards and forwards, doing stuff that gets them very little in the way of results. And what we need to do is we need to look at it slightly differently, and we need to concentrate our efforts on the 20% of things that give us 80% of our results. So what are the things that you need to be concentrating on in your business that gives you 80% of the results? And as a business owner, it's probably things like planning, organising, controlling, all the old stuff that used to come in all the great management courses that you've been taught over the years. And just before we sort of bring it all to an end and start wrapping everything up together, just a very quick thing in terms of what's the best time of day then to do these 20% of things that give us our 80% of the results? And what you will find is many people have got, they have what their energy cycles or their energy curves. Now, most people are larks, owls, or hummingbirds. Genuine larks are those people, very much like myself, and my wife hates me dearly for it, are up at sort of 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and can go and get work done really quickly. They consider breakfast to be a midday meal, but what they tend to do then is they tend to fall off in terms of their energy levels towards the end of the day. Owls, on the other hand, owls are those people that you see walking around at 10 o'clock in the morning with a cup of coffee in their hands, still trying to wake up because they didn't actually go to bed till midnight or 1 o'clock because they were busy working, and that's their best time of day. However, both owls and larks only make up about 10% of the population. So everybody else are what I class as hummingbirds. They're somewhere in the middle, in between those sort of larks and the owls. So how can we make use of this? Well, one of the things that I always say to people is that this is, if you think this is a diagram for a sort of larkish hummingbird's energy cycle. So they're sort of quite early morning people, but they're not proper sort of 5 o'clocks. So what they'll do, they get up in the morning, when they get into work, they can prioritise perhaps what they're going to do for the day, but do some warm-up tasks, do some tasks that don't really take a lot of thinking about, maybe making that odd return phone call, maybe doing a bit of filing. But then in the mid-morning, maybe sort of 9:30, 10 o'clock time, you can start thinking about doing key tasks. And of course, one of those key tasks might be one of the things that you've identified as your 3 key things to do for the day. So they can do that, get one of those out of the way, and then if they want, they can then go on to another one as well. So in the morning, it might be the case that they've worked on 2 of their key tasks that they've identified for the day. Once they've done that, going down towards lunchtime, and yes, I'm an avid believer that we should actually take a lunch break. Going down towards lunch, give yourself a bit of a reward task. So a reward task, in my view, this might be going in and talking to somebody about last night's football or EastEnders or whatever. Go and grab yourself a coffee, a chocolate bar, or whatever it is, for something that you really enjoy doing. Lunch break, and then into the afternoon. For a larkish hummingbird, their energy cycles, their energy levels are not going to be as high during the afternoon as they were during the morning. But the same thing again, they can start the afternoon off with a warm-up task, and then work on one of their other key tasks or another one completely in the afternoon, and then working down towards the end of the day, same thing again, a reward task, and then maybe finish the day off by writing their action to-do list ready for tomorrow. So that's what it looks like for a larkish hummingbird. I've used that one because a majority of people, purely because of the hours they work, do tend to be larkish hummingbirds. However, there are people, IT developers seem to be big ones that do have this tendency to be owlish hummingbirds, and thereafter it's almost a complete reverse of that one there, where they get all their energy and their best energy levels are in the afternoon. So use your best time of the day to actually do the things that require a lot of thought and an in-depth thought process. Use your lower energy times to do the things that you don't have to think about too much. So how do we bring everything together there? So 3 really sort of distinct tools. If we sort of think about how we're bringing it all together, what we're talking about is, we've already said about our prioritization grid. So how do we prioritize our tasks? Where should we be spending most of our time? We should be spending most of our time in that B box. So that's where we should be spending it. There's always going to be an overlap into other areas, because we do have to deal with emergencies. We do have to deal with bits and pieces that happen to us. And let's face it, every now and again, we also have those self-inflicted time stealers. And sometimes we just need our downtime. So it's about getting that balance right. What do we do in that B area? The first thing that we do is our 3 actions for the day that we've already identified from our action to-do list. Doing those, and then making sure that we do them at the best time, at our best time of day. So we prioritize, we've already set our goals, and we can look at how we can then move forward. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. Hope you found it useful. If you want to contact me, you can contact me a little bit on those details there. I do have a book being published on the 1st of September. Once again, you can contact me if you want to any more information about that. But it sums up a lot of things that we've been talking about today as we've gone through. Hope you found it useful, and if there are any questions, I'll be willing to answer them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Mike. Yeah, there are a number of questions come through. I'll read them out to you. The first one is from Lucy. You say that time management is easy. How do you define time management?
For me, that definition is very much around, as we said, that for me, that time management is about getting the balance right, and it is about ensuring that we set our goals, so we're managing, we're taking action for the right reasons at the right time, and doing things in the right order.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question. Time management starts with goals, and most business owners set goals wrongly. How should they be set?
Once again, making sure that we take that holistic view to them. So taking a holistic view of them, don't just get waylaid into ensuring that you're doing achievement goals. Make sure that make sure you're actually doing it in terms of preservation goals, elimination goals, and avoidance goals as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question from Laura. As you've said, most people do use lists, but you say they don't work for everybody. Why do you think that is?
One of the things very much is that a lot of right brain people, because of the way their brain thinks in that sort of structured way, then it is about the fact that if you're right brained, a lot of the time to-do lists don't work because they overwhelm right brain thinkers. They do work very well for left brain thinkers, but the same thing again, you've got to make sure we use them in the right way.
Okay, thank you. And another question, how can I use energy cycles to help grow my small business?
That's a good question. I think in terms of it's being aware of ensuring that we use our best times of the day to do the things that can actually grow our business. So maybe writing marketing materials, making those marketing calls when we're on top of things. So from that sort of things, it's making sure that the activities you need to do to grow your business, you're actually doing at the best time of day.
Okay, thank you. Roger sent a question in. How do you think your own time management works?
Bless you, Roger. It doesn't work too badly. I put a lot up. Well, I do put everything into play. Like all small business owners, I have the times when you have to do the long hours. However, I always make sure I get them back again. So if I'm working late, then I do know that if I'm working late, I do know that I will get that time back, and I do take the time off during the week.
Okay, and the last question then is from Steve. Should your book launch be at 6 p.m. or during earlier business hours?
I've made it at 6 p.m, Steve, purely because that's when a lot of people can actually get to it. But I will be taking time off the next morning to make sure that I balance it all out.
Okay. Many thanks again, Mike. That was a great session. I'll be sending out a copy of Mike's presentation to you all, and that will include his contact details. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you make our Lunch and Learn webinars a regular slot in your calendar. They're every Tuesday at 12:30. Mike and I hope you have a great afternoon. Thanks again for joining us all. Bye.
Thanks a lot.